In this section of the New York State Archives webinar on preserving electronic records in colleges and universities, we'll offer some strategies for you to consider when preparing for or resetting your direction in preserving your institution's electronic records. The first thing to remember is that designing one strategy for all content and environments you may face may not be practical. So keep in mind that one size does not fit all. You can have different approaches depending on the individual record series and the technology infrastructure you may see in your institution. You have to expect change during planning as well as throughout your daily work. Things will change and you will need to adapt. Changes will occur not only with technology, but also in non-IT areas such as with staffing, considering retirements, extended leaves, and new hires, among other changes. And of course, we have to be prepared, as best we can, with changes regarding funding. There are three fundamental goals when developing your preservation strategy. The first one is obviously ensuring the future readability of the information stored. The reliability of the media, storing the information in the proper format are obviously some of what we have to be concerned about, so the content can be read and displayed properly well into the future. The second goal is to have an authoritative and trustworthy process. This includes transferring the records from their production environment to the proper storage in your area. From there, you must ensure that the records are secure, kept in a well-protected environment, while allowing proper and secure access to the intended audience. To ensure the long-term success of your program and your efforts, it is important to have two preservation strategies: a process strategy as well as a marketing strategy. The process strategy focuses on the ingesting or ascensioning process of records, in addition to the preserving, maintaining, and accessing of the records. In some cases, just as important is the marketing strategy needed to create the proper awareness of the issues and garner support from senior administration in order to ensure the ongoing support of your program. The first strategy you need to develop revolves around the actual process steps followed to preserve electronic records. There are typically 4 stages to follow in the preservation process: ingest, preserve, maintain, and access. Each of these will be discussed separately on the following slides. In addition to these 4 stages, it is important that an overall management process is in place to oversee the preservation work. The management process starts with developing a written mission statement for your organization. A mission statement describes the purpose of your digital preservation efforts and must be integrated into your overall mission statement and direction within your area. Once your mission statement is defined, what specific policies are needed to support the defined mission statement? Policies are aligned with and describe how your mission statement will be followed. Areas to cover include stating responsibility and roles of your organization and the staff, the type of custody of the collection, quality control, and the steps that you follow to ensure you are in compliance with stated objectives and the governing bodies, among other policies. The ingest process can be thought of as equating to the ascensioning process in the traditional archival areas. In this stage, it is important that you determine what files you can and cannot accept, considering such areas as file formats, application used to create these files, as well as the total volume. Can you handle the total storage volume of a particular user department? Do you have enough digital storage space? What is the proper method for a user to transfer files to you? Is emailing them or sending them on DVDs or a USB drive appropriate? Do you have an official sign-off to the transfer process? It is important to also consider the minimum metadata that users must include when sending the files. How else are you going to know what they are sending? Metadata is often described as data about data. It's descriptive information that helps with the management of and access to the digital objects being described. This includes both administrative metadata about each file, such as location, access controls, checksums, usage audit trails, ownership, versions, creation time, and more, and descriptive metadata that may be specific to a particular collection. You must maintain metadata as part of a complete record to establish authenticity, facilitate retrieval, and to understand the record's context and relevance. Metadata can be generated automatically by the originating application as part of the creation process, as well as manually created or entered into a system. An example of metadata generated by the application itself include file size, the file format, the date, time, the creator, etc. In an email environment, automatically generated metadata can include information from the to field, from field, carbon copy, subject, date, and the time of the email. But also within email, there's hidden metadata that can include the return path of the email, the unique message ID, since every email can have a unique ID assigned to it, the blind carbon copy, among others. Metadata can also be manually entered or generated from other systems and captured and matched with the metadata that you already collected, providing an additional classification for that record, including subject, title, retention periods, record series, and other keywords. As part of the ingest process is storing the files in a secure repository. Having the proper security and protection methods in place is an obvious concern, including having an appropriate firewall and read-only access to the files. Having monitoring tools and procedures in place is also critical, including intrusion detection, to lower the risk of unwanted remote access to your collection. And don't overlook the physical access to the digital repository, since once someone can gain physical access to your area, greater harm can be done, including stealing or damaging your storage media. When defining your particular preservation strategy, it is important that these three components are included. Be consistent in your approach and methods used. Document all processes followed and update as needed. And plan for change, at least as best as you can. There are several different approaches one can use to preserve the various digital collections. They include bitstream copying, which is in essence copying the original native file or replicating that file to another area. More copies being kept in more areas means a greater chance of survival for future generations to be able to access that file. While this approach alone does not ensure preservation for future generations, it is common to use in conjunction with other approaches. Refreshing is copying the digital files to newer media, but using the same type of media, such as copying information from one backup tape to another backup tape. System preservation has been used to keep and maintain all the hardware, software, and media required to access a file. For example, if your institution used to use a mainframe or mini-computer and you changed to a PC server-based computing environment, you could keep the old system stored in a corner of the data center, and when older information is needed, it could be accessed from the old system. Often this is a short-term solution, since eventually hardware components will fail and replacement becomes more difficult. Other approaches include emulating an older environment within new operating systems. For example, if your files were created on a PC-based platform and now your institution uses an Apple or Unix-based platform, you could emulate a Windows application on your Apple or Unix-based workstation. But this approach can also be short-term as newer operating systems are introduced. The emulation program may not be supported on the newer operating systems, and the emulator may have to be rewritten or updated over time. Migration is copying from one system or media to another, which can include copying to a different type of media or system altogether. It is considered broader than refreshing, since some of the characteristics of the file may be changed during this migration process. Normalization is a popular approach and involves saving a native file to a common or open standard, such as PDF-A, XML, or scanning to a TIFF file. Typically, this approach also is matched with bitstream copying for further assurance that the specific characteristics of that file will be preserved for future generations. But let's not forget about paper and microform for preserving files. You can also print digital files to archival quality paper if more appropriate for your collection. Also, you should consider computer output to microfilm, or COM. This process involves converting digital documents to TIFF images and then writing the TIFF images to 16 mm or 35 mm microfilm. The obvious advantages here is a long life expectancy, and it negates the issue of technology obsolescence. It is also a relatively low-cost alternative. But these approaches are better suited for static documents and does not address more complex documents such as web pages or other documents using multimedia. Nor does it address dynamic applications such as databases, GIS applications, among others. The slower access to paper or microform may also be considered a hindrance for this approach for some users.